We're the Avengers. We can bust arms dealers all the live long day, but that up there, that's the end game.
Not a perfect soldier, but a good man.
Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
I got red in my ledger. I'd like to wipe it out.
Truth is, I am Iron Man. Iron Man.
The MCU used to be brilliant. It used to be character-driven with cohesive stories, grand arcing narratives, funny. It was everything. I used to be a massive fan. I would regularly rewatch all the movies. I called it the main Marvel movie marathon. I had the Avengers theme as my ringtone. I have all of these. I was so excited to see what was coming after Endgame. I was massively disappointed. Spoiler alert for Spider-Man Brand New Day. You have been warned. Guys, I feel like it's been so long. Have you missed me? Because I missed you. Hello, my name is Khadija and I make video essays about film and television where my opinion is the only one that matters. Pleased to make your acquaintance. I have some exciting videos coming up this month that we are really locked in. So if you like what you hear today, you should totally join me on this ride. Like, subscribe, comment, and let's get the show on the road. The MCU that we once knew was so prominent and massive that the concept of creating a cinematic universe was invented. The MCU was able to take characters that were actually lesser known from the comics and redefine them, make them into stars, make them into heroes, create a series of films all deeply interconnected that would eventually cross over into big events. This was utterly unique, having individual films that establish individual characters and then connecting them into something bigger. They did this in a variety of different ways. They first focused on building up the characters with their own storylines, and then they built the world from them. We got the solo films for Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and Hulk before the first Avengers film. We learned who these people were, what they stood for, what they were fighting for. We learned their flaws, their vices, and their strengths, their advantages. And when they first come together, all of this is fully on display. There is a lot of tension between them. There are a lot of things they have to work through and deal with, and we can understand exactly why, because we know exactly who these characters are already. We watch them come together as a team and learn and grow. Their challenges are directly related to their flaws and their strengths, and so they can directly learn from that. Tony has to learn to not be selfish. Steve has to learn to trust others. So does Natasha. Banner has to learn how to trust himself. And then these character arcs continue into their individual films. Again, in phase 2, we get a cohesive character arc for everyone that extends to the whole of the Infinity Saga, characterizes their villains and challenges and battles, and defines the MCU. The MCU was always driven by their strong characters, brought to life by now beloved actors. So what happened? Why now do we barely even know who the Avengers are? There are a lot of theories as to why the MCU is so different now. Too much fan service, too many characters, too many internal issues and competing visions. Here's what I think it is. Considering the fact that it is still more or less run by the same people who were able to build this beautiful, massive world from scratch, I think they simply ran into a problem trying to repeat it after the Infinity Saga. They had to both create new characters to lead this world and make it cohesive with an already existing world that was defined by old characters who were now leaving. This proved difficult. we all can tell that the MCU is very different now. And so now we have a world with fragmented characters and insulated storylines that do not connect, and Doomsday is coming after never having even been teased save for the Fantastic Four end credit scene. And that is not just because they fired Jonathan Majors. That was actually, I think, a good thing for them. Because the King saga, it was not shaping out to be good, in my opinion. I think they were doing a terrible job of introducing that character as well. What Marvel should have done was lead into this new era with the remaining heroes from the Infinity Saga, so that they would have a point of connection, instead of sidelining them for the new era. Which brings me to Spider-Man. Spider-Man, who has had 4 very successful and great films. The first film, after Endgame, his storyline, however, has concerned only him. His success has been built on the massive Spider-Man fan base, not the MCU fan base. He technically belongs to Sony. He is very disconnected from the rest of the MCU world right now. No Way Home could have tied many of the multiverse elements together that are supposed to define this phase, but instead we get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Nothing is really concrete or set in stone. Nothing is cohesive. Nothing comes together. The best part of the MCU was how interconnected it was. It was very impressive how they were able to do that. Just watching video compilations of all the clever callbacks in Endgame, and we can see how much thought and intention was behind creating this universe. Now it feels, with the multiverse saga, we have a bunch of little worlds that hardly interact and leave much to be desired. Never before have we, I think, been so unclear on when we would next see certain characters or what was in store for them. It is too many characters, yes, but it's mostly there are too many isolated storylines. They're not overlapping or crossing over the way they're supposed to. They're essentially spin-offs. It's not a universe anymore. Let's talk about the new Spider-Man movie before I get back to complaining. But don't worry, I will get back to it. This movie, bringing back a familiar and very beloved character, was miles ahead, no pun intended, of most of the recent MCU films. It had an actual character arc. Remember those? Remember when there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we saw a change? Remember what you learned in 3rd grade about telling a story? Remember when people's actions had consequences, so they learned and they grew? It's just, I've been holding this in for a while. I have. Spider-Man films have always been very good at that part in particular. Character arc via consequences. Poor Peter has nothing but consequences. No family, no friends, no girlfriend, no college education, no joy, no spark behind his eyes. No, stop. I liked the theme of this movie. It's just something simple and common for superhero movies: accepting who you are, be who you are, and it expanded upon it a bit. Peter needed to accept his humanity so that he would embrace his full powers without worrying about turning evil. He needed to accept that change, and part of that was moving on from who he used to be and stepping into this new space where he is both Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Part of that was moving on from MJ, even a character who has been nothing more than a romantic love interest, evolved from comedic relief, but that's always really the case with this character. They don't really do anything impressive with her, in my opinion. But I did like what they did with Gwen Stacy in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies. I thought that she was a much more fleshed out character. But back to Tom Holland. His performance in this movie was very strong. It always is, but there was just something extra special about him playing a character that has changed so much. This is, let's put a pin in that, the discussion about character development. It's a much longer one, because the way Marvel has completely abandoned the art of that after the Infinity Saga is their biggest issue, I believe. I loved how the movie looked. I really enjoyed the plot progression. Hulk was kind of thrown in there randomly. I loved the inclusion of Punisher. I thought it was nice and reinforced Peter's progression, because in the past movies, we saw him having a supervisory, almost father figure. And now he has a friend, someone with whom he's on equal footing. He really has become much more of an adult. Punisher's also needed to lighten up the movie, I think. Otherwise, we would have had another amazing Spider-Man on our hands. Love Yelena. We all love Yelena, but it still does make me wonder who are the who are the Avengers? Who are Sam Wilson's Avengers? Who are evidently suing for copyright because Spider-Man went to Yelena for help. Not Sam Wilson, okay? You gotta step up your game, Cap. I would have liked to see something, anything at all, that's tied to Doomsday. Anything at all. And so with cohesion between all these stories, it is not a standalone film. None of these are standalone projects. Why are we acting like they are? Yes, we got that end credit scene, but I think that's actually a reference to Secret Wars, not Doomsday. Do you know how I know Marvel is confused on how to introduce their characters? Look at, spoiler alert, last chance. Look at who Sadie Sink plays in this movie. Jean Grey. Yes, she was Jean Grey. Pretends to be shocked. Why they were so adamant about keeping it a secret, I don't know. I think because the third film was so successful. It's like the 6th highest grossing box office film of all time. And part of that was because of this surprise of having all 3 Spider-Man. But I think the difference there was that we didn't expect a surprise. So, but anyways, why was she like that? Sadie Sink, great, brilliant, love her. But Jean Grey, the character herself, possessing MJ and kissing Spider-Man, that poor man she put in front of a taxi, she was unnecessarily cruel. I can't imagine what teenager would behave like that. I know she wanted her sister back from Department of Damage Control, but this was before she even knew her sister was dead. And I remind you, she's a kid. What? I really can't make sense of this. Her actions, I think, were too far and not proportional. Wanda in Age of Ultron did not go this far. She just gave them a few nightmares. Jean Grey was about to kill everyone within a 1-kilometer radius. Spider-Man literally calls her a monster at one point. Are we just gonna ignore that? Also, she could have just talked to him. I know, she didn't trust him. She thought that he was the enemy, but she also knew he didn't know what she was looking for. Okay? That was the only reason why he was in her way, which angered her so much. So why don't she just tell him, this is what I'm doing? Because clearly he didn't know. So look, I don't understand. We used to have characters introduced in amazing ways. Look at Tony Stark. Look at just the first Iron Man film. He loses his father, he's a genius, takes over his father's weapons manufacturing company, only to be attacked by his own weapons, taken prisoner by a terrorist organization, and Yinsen saves his life with the arc reactor, and he builds the Iron Man suit in a cave with a box of scraps. He then makes a complete life change, which makes sense given his traumatic experience. This is what drives the story, the change of who he is, which leads to all the subsequent plot points. You see, he becomes lovable. We become attached because we've watched him grow. And this is precisely what we see from him from the rest of his time in the MCU. We continue to watch him learn to make sacrifices, grow and evolve, learn how to navigate this new world that he has a huge part in creating. We see the same thing with Thor, losing his hammer and having to become worthy of it, and Captain America proving that he is a good person and then taking the serum only to be turned into a prop and having to fight to do the right thing, triggering that his deep distrust of authority that defines everything else he does in the Infinity Saga and most of the conflicts, particularly Civil War, which directly leads into Infinity War. Do you see how it all connects? It was nearly flawless. It was beautiful. It was. I've been doing it for him. Because now it doesn't feel like the same world. And I think that's part of the problem. The MCU has to create a new world now because it has new characters, but it wants to hold on to the previous things, and those are kind of clashing. Let's look at the project since Endgame to make my point more salient. Spider-Man Far From Home, WandaVision, Falcon the Winter Soldier, Black Widow prequel that includes Yelena and Red Guardian, who are now part of the new Avengers, Loki, which deals with the multiverse and has had massive implications for these 2 phases, Shang-Chi, who we have not seen since, The Eternals, who we have not seen since, Spider-Man No Way Home, followed by Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which had Wanda as the villain, yet didn't really add anything to the overall phase. Thor, Love, and Thunder to wrap up his storyline, except it's not wrapped up, and he will be back in the next film. Actually, Miss Markle, who we see in Markles, which everyone hated, Hawkeye, introduced Kate Bishop, who we have not seen since. Black Panther 2 sees Shuri become Black Panther and introduces Ironheart, who we have not seen since, but does introduce Namor, who we will see in the coming movie. She-Hulk, who we've not seen since. Moon Knight, we have not seen since Secret Invasion. Ant-Man, Quantumanium had Kang, who was since gutted. Guardians 3 were trapped up there. Storyline, Deadpool and Wolverine had no broader implications besides just introducing these characters into the MCU. Captain America Brave New World we did see a rare call back to that, to a previous film with Eternals, but mostly did nothing to expand upon Sam Wilson being Cap. I think the show actually covered most of that, and this film was just, it felt like it was contractually obligated. Thunderbolts, which I like that movie, I love that movie. And it did do something, not have to New Adventures, and the Fantastic Four. I know I'm missing a whole bunch, but do you see a pattern here? Each project, for the most part, either ties up a storyline or introduces a new character that immediately disappears into the ether. There are no overarching narratives. There are no connection points. Which brings me back to my original point. Marvel tried to solve a problem in 2 parts. Tie up old storylines and launch new ones. They soon ran out of time and space. I imagine what also happened is with all these new shows, which they assumed would give them the extra time to bring everything together, they lost a little bit of that consistent producer oversight. Most of the films in the Infinity Saga have all of the same top people working on them. Just look at the credits. We always see Kevin Feige, Louis Despito, Victoria Alonso, but with how big the MCU has experienced since then, I imagine that they just can't have the same consistent production. And so some things aren't going to tie into each other as well as they did in the past. They just can't keep that same level of prominence and prevalence. It was very impressive, almost photographic memory-like coherence that the MCU once had, but a sacrifice had to be made. That I can accept. I can accept not having little jokes that call back to a movie 7 years prior. You have to have seen every single movie together. So like it's fun for sure. And I think that it's a huge part of the MCU's what makes a universe, but I think that it's a sacrifice that they could afford. What was not a sacrifice that they could afford was not having unity between their stories, particularly their old world and this new one. What they should have done was blend the old stories into the new ones. Give us a reason to care about these new characters by connecting it to characters and events that we already care about. Old heroes, old events from the Infinity Saga. Far From Home did a good job with that. It referenced villains that were randomly in the first 3 phases. That was cool. And one of the reasons why Yelena is so much more developed than other characters, because she had a direct connection to Black Widow, who we saw the Black Widow storyline get tied up, but also we saw that be used as a launching pad for Yelena. That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. That's what they should have done. Pay homage to the old guard, have them be mentors to the new people, and then bring in those new people, extend the world, so don't retcon it, and then phase out the old characters. Marvel's now scrambling to bring them back to appeal to the pre-existing fan base and attempt to reverse their mistake of sending them away too soon. But how are they going to fix the mistake of the lack of connection that we have with all these new characters? How about the fact that we don't even know who the Avengers are right now? That is an insane problem to have months before the next big Avengers film. 2, in fact, since apparently I think I heard that Secret Wars will be the only MCU property next year. I think that's what Feige announced at Comic-Con. He says that they want quality over quantity, which is exactly what they said about the Marvels, which had like a insane budget. I don't want to misspeak, but it was definitely an insane budget. I just don't remember the number right now. Yeah, it's not about that at all. They just need time to catch up. Let's be real. Doomsday will allegedly be what the past 2 phases have been building up to, except they literally haven't. And we know that. Who are we trying to fool? We can be honest. We don't need to masquerade and pretend this does not have to be the next Infinity War Endgame duo. I think the comparison is actually doing it harm. This is another Avengers movie where we will be bringing together a lot of the new characters, although then everyone make the cut and bring in a new villain. I think that it's actually much more comparable to Avengers 1 than Avengers 3. Yeah, Secret Wars is coming. And they're gonna have that part 1, part 2 similar to Infinity War and Endgame, but it just doesn't have the same groundwork. I think we just need to be honest about that and focus on using this to bring everyone back together and bring the audience back up to speed and have us all back in love with these characters, okay? Because we barely know these characters. Everyone in Infinity War was on their 4th or 5th appearance, basically. We could have sprinkled in a lot of those new characters in the freaking billion shows that they had, but let's not focus on the past. Let's not talk about what we did wrong anymore. Let's just look towards the future. Okay, that's actually why I'm not too mad about them bringing back Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, because they are finally remedying their mistake of not connecting the old world with this new one. Now the question is, will they forget about actually launching the new world, which is kind of what it's looking like. The MCU feels as if we are living in the past that wants so badly to be taken seriously. It's like a child star reinventing themselves, but they can't shake their previous image. The MCU has to seriously ask itself, how exactly do we want to handle everything going forward? Because it can't be the same as the Infinity Saga. It can't. It's just not the same world anymore. It's not the same characters who created this world. So things are going to be different, okay? Those times are over, so the MCU needs to determine how it's going to redefine itself. And you know what? That's what they did with the first 3 phases. They were started from scratch. So I think they might be able to do it again. I'm honestly excited for Doomsday. You will see me in the theater when Endgame re-releases so that I can get that extra Doomsday-related footage. Okay. I'm deeply passionate about the MCU, if you couldn't tell. And you will be hearing from me again on this very subject matter. Feige, my foot is on that neck. It's, oh my gosh, you're not the end of the video, and I had to do an outro, even though I know that barely anyone is watching at this point, but I still have to do it. It's okay. It's okay. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. You are a little superstar, and I will see you so soon. Bye bye.
No, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up. No, I don't